Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Back to my obsessions. Obsessed with sprays and the stencil I'm going to use, which I've used count like every video I've been posting lately. Anyway, on the weekend, Tim Holtz did another live video. You can still like find it on his channel. And highly recommend, I think I've said this before, highly recommend watching his videos. There's just so much info about the distress line and different products. I try and share as much, but he goes like in depth because hello, they're his products. So I had that playing while I was doing this and I was just creating. So I had some watercolor paper and I started with Antique Linen Distress Oxide Spray. I sprayed the paper down with water, spritzed it with the distress spray, dried it a bit, smushed it, just experimenting. I've had people commenting like they don't have any sprays, like they're going to try and do the same thing with distress inks, distress oxide ink pads, you know, doing the smushing and spraying and all that stuff. Go for it. Just play with them. Play with what you got, you know, any water reactive sort of inks you have, if they're dye based, whatever. Play with it. See what happens. That's the fun of all of this. So I started with that oxide spray background. It was just antique linen. That's it. Wiped off my craft mat. And then of course I'm going to use this spring boho circle stencil. I don't put it away. I haven't put anything away. I got a mess to clean up, but this just sits on my desk. I love it. I love this stencil. So I used it with more crackle paste. Again, like I've been mentioning, because I'm obsessed with crackle paste as well. The crackle paste I'm using right now is an old formula. The stuff I linked to is a little more opaque, and I will make sure to inform you guys once I actually get it in my hands. I'm waiting. I've ordered it. Canada Post is just taking forever. But this one is a little more translucent, and it kind of absorbs more of the color, which is fine. It's just, I'm just making sure you guys know, like, it's different. So it was completely dry. I'm going to keep coming back to that background, though. I don't want to leave it just like that. I'm going to, you know, add to it. So then the other thing I did was I die cut that watercolor paper. This is the Cosmo Flower Petals from Simon Says Stamp. I purchased this. I forget what release it came out in. Came out in one of the releases. I bought it because it wasn't sent to me, and I love Cosmos. And plus, I just wanted to play with these wafer dies. So I die cut them, and this is where I really got messy. You could spray or, you know, create a background or whatever first and then die cut it. One, that would be a lot less messy, and you get great results. But I'm really having fun just messing with all this, like spraying and inking and smushing and playing, and I love it. This, I used Picked Raspberry Distress Oxide Spray and Picked Raspberry Distress Spray Stain. And I'm mixing these sprays, like using both here and there, and I'll do it again with another color. Because you get different results. And I'm literally just having fun with it. I will say though, the Picked Raspberry, especially because it's like such a deep pigment, like it got in under, you know, under my nails or on my cuticles. Like I still have a little bit like really deep in there under my nails. All the hand washing and hand sanitizer isn't even getting rid of it. But if it really bothers you to get your hands stained with this sort of stuff, just wear gloves and you'll be fine. So I have like all that ink there, and I smushed my background into it as well. That crackle paste was dry, so it, you know, some of it absorbs, and I've got that splatter, and I will come back to it again. For the flower centers, I used a combination of the Antique Linen Distress Oxide Spray and Walnut Stain Distress Spray Stain. Again, you get different looks because the oxide sprays have pigment and the dye qualities suspended in the liquid. The distress spray stains have just the dye qualities, so just different looks. Whatever floats your boat. I'm slowly getting all the distress spray stains as well. I have all the oxides. I had purchased them when Ranger released them in like the sets or whatever, you know. So I literally have them all. So I'm making a point of finally using them, and I'm loving them. And now I'm getting the spray stains as well, because why not? So with this background, I keep coming back to it. You know, I added some of that splatter too with the brown and whatever, and then I sprayed water on it because why not? And then I'll dry it with my heat tool. And I want to do more of this, like just experimenting with the sprays and backgrounds and stencils. And it's just, there's something really fun to just see what's going to happen. Because you don't know exactly what happens, because things have a mind of their own. So at the end, I'll show a close-up of this flower center. It's kind of neat how the antique linen oxide, like, it almost patinaed in a way, which was really fun. That's the thing I love about the oxide sprays too, is they can be very unpredictable in some ways, how they'll oxidize and, just change a bit. So I have this piece of watercolor paper. This time I'm spraying it before I die cut it. So you can do whatever you want. So I'm spraying this one with Peacock Feathers, Distress Oxide, and Distress Spray Stain. Just spraying it quite heavily. I'm going to let that completely dry. And then I'm going to smush my background again, get some of those turquoisey splatters. And yeah, this is one of those cards too. Like, I'm not following a color throwdown challenge like I usually do. Like, I was just randomly picking colors. I was like, I like pink. Let's add some brown. Let's add some turquoise. So this is the background I ended up with, which I don't know. I love how the color just like seeped into the cracks, and I've got the splatters and a bit of patina going on, and and that bright pink, like picked raspberry, is my absolute favorite, I would say. I have so many favorites, but it's one of my favorites. It's just such an intense color. So all my little flower petals are dry. So I'm just adhering them together, and I'm only adding a little just dot of craft tacky glue, right, kind of at I'll call it the base of each petal to adhere that outline. I'm not adding adhesive to the entire outline because I like, it's popped up a little bit, gives it a little bit extra dimension. Plus it's just easier adhering it this way. And with the flower center, with this die set, you can pop out all the little holes, to give it that texture. I didn't do that. I just left it. And then the second piece is supposed to back, the piece with all the little holes. But instead, I just used that as my base to adhere these petals to. It just made things easier. So I just went around with this. The die set itself die cuts 3 petals. So then you can choose how many you want to cut. So I only did it twice, so I had 6, but you could, layer them and stagger them and all that kind of stuff. But I did the 6 and then just kind of adhered them around that circle. And then to adhere the flower center, I'm just going to pop a little thin 3D foam square right in the center there just to boost it up a little bit. And then use my craft tacky glue and glue that into place. So once I've got that glued into place, I had waited till the turquoise piece was dry, and then I die cut it with the CZ Design Just Because wafer die. And then I die cut the remainder of that scrap again, just so I have a second layer to die cut so that I've got a little bit of dimension for these words. So I'm going to adhere them together. And then the outline I die cut from Nina Desert Storm cardstock. So I'll adhere the words to the outline with my craft tacky glue. And then once I've got all of that adhered, I'm going to adhere my flower and my sentiment to that background. And I'm going to trim down my background just a little bit, just so it's a bit smaller than an A2 card front. So I just went around and trimmed off 1/8 of an inch, something like that, just so it's, again, so it's a little smaller than my A2 card base. So I've got that trimmed down. Everything is dry. Good to go. If you find when you're playing with like sprays and things like that, like things aren't adhering together, more often than not, it's because they're probably wet still. Because if the cardstock or the watercolor paper, etc., is saturated, glue doesn't want to stick to it. So I find sometimes when I get a little impatient, I'm moving too quickly, and I'm like, why are the things not gluing together? Yeah, they're not dry. So that's why a lot of times when I say like it is completely dry now, you want to make sure things are dry before you glue them. You want to make sure they're dry before you die cut them, that sort of stuff, because you're going to be in for a bad time. So I adhered all those, and then of course I still got to add splatter. So I was going to add like, white splatter and my, perfect pearl combo splatter, but instead I'm going to add gold, and I'm glad I did, because the gold just really, with these colors, the pink and the turquoise and the brown and the antique linen, and then just this gold splatter, it was just perfect. And you can never go wrong. This is my little Gonzai Tombi, Starry Colors watercolor set. And with any sort of watercolor like this that is metallic, etc., you really want to work it up really, really well. You get it wet, work it up, get all that pigment really mixed in, and then either paint with it or, like I do, splatter all the things. So I splatter that, set that all aside. For my little companion sentiments, I'm using Simon's inside friendship messages stamp set. It's a great big 6x8 set. There's a ton of really good sentiments in here. I just went with the simpler ones, but there's so many good sentiments in that set. And I lined them up on some dark chocolate cardstock. And then I'm going to heat emboss this with Simon's cream embossing powder. This came out in Hello Beautiful release, which I still haven't done a release and review video on. That's a whole other issue. I'll get to it. I'm struggling. Anyway, cream embossing powder. I'm loving it. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, like, would you love cream embossing powder? I've been like, yeah, no, probably not. I like just white or metallics, etc. I've been reaching for this cream embossing powder. I like it because it goes really well with, you know, these watercolor papers. It's not so stark white. So I'm finding this one I might actually get multiple containers of, so I can put them in my big plastic container that you guys see me use, because I'm really liking it. So anyway, I heat emboss the sentiments with that embossing powder. I trim them down with my paper trimmer. I adhered the one to the card front, and then my card base is more Desert Storm cardstock. So it'll be a top folding A2 size card, so 4 1/4 by 5.5. And I'm going to use the stencil on the inside of the card, of course. It's another reason why I love the stencil. It's perfect for the outside, but it gives me that extra that I love to add to the inside of the cards. So to add the stencil to the inside, I just used, I forgot the name of it for a second, Peacock Feathers Distress ink. Just the regular Distress ink, not the Oxide ink. And a blending brush, and just lightly blended that onto the inside of the card, and it just, perfection. So I used that with a little blending brush, and then I adhered the little companion sentiment there onto the inside of the card. And then to adhere the card front, I showed this in my last video, I'm just using scraps of this one happens to be Desert Storm cardstock again. Just random scraps that I'd have that I didn't want to throw out because they have like stamping on one side or stenciling or things that, you know, ended up being crooked or I just didn't use that, you know, can't use for a card base. I trim them down and I use them to add dimension, that sort of thing. So I adhered that, and then one last, of course, is a little bit of bling. Nothing too crazy because I've got all the splatter and the texture and everything. But I have these raspberry mix jewels from Little Things by Lucy's Cards. So sprinkled those kind of around the card, and then I'm going to adhere them into place with little dabs of craft tacky glue. And then once those are adhered, I'm going to pair this card with I have a turquoise envelope for my stash. I'm sorry, I don't have a link for this one. I have a bunch of random envelopes that I no idea. They're not like, I don't label my envelopes, but turquoise envelope that just happened to be like the perfect color. So paired it with that, and that finished off today's card. So I will have a link below the video. I'll link to my blog post. I'll have the pictures and picture links to all the supplies in my blog post. You just check out the description box below the video. All the info will be there if you are interested. Thank you guys so much for watching, for subscribing, for thumbs upping, commenting, all of it. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.